Yeah, thank you so much, Gus. It's I'm feeling very, very healthy and well, which is fantastic. I feel very, very blessed. And as I said, you are one of the people who really contributed and assisted me in getting to where I am now. And I'm just eternally, eternally grateful to you.
Nice to connect again on the journey and to see where you're at. And I think that's what it's about, is that one can connect at different stages in journeys. It's nice to see something happen for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The thing I wanted us to chat about that I've really been thinking about, that I had no idea about until I came to Mosaico. I didn't know there was such a thing as codependency, which is bizarre because, you know, I looked up the statistic this week and it said that 96% of people are codependent to one degree or another. And I remember before I came in to Mosaico, remember I had that boyfriend. It was a 2-month stint. It wasn't even like a long relationship, and he was so lovely. I don't know what I would have done without him, because I was so sick at the time. I was taking all those painkillers and I didn't know whether I was coming or going. But he kept saying to me, Susanna, you're so codependent. And I was like, what are you talking about? And I had no idea what he was talking about. I really had no idea what he was talking about. And one of the most, I think, profound things on my healing journey was working with you with that book, Breaking the Codependency Trap, because it made me see actions that I had been repeating my whole life, you know, behaviors, decisions and choices that I had made, and it suddenly like made sense. Whereas before they're kind of just things that you think are normal and they, you know, what's wrong with them. But then when they come to light, you know, you realize how actually dysfunctional they are and how they don't serve you or anybody around you. And it was the first time I was also introduced to the concept of interdependence, and that being too independent is not good either, you know. So yes. All of those things really helped me shift so much. And we were speaking the other day, and we were saying how I don't read books. I like study them and underline and highlight, and you know, that book. I mean, I read your one first, and then I somehow got hold of a copy of my own, and then because I remember reading yours and thinking, sure, but I can't highlight anything or write in your book. And then my one just got annihilated with pen marks and things everywhere. But it was such a helpful book. So I think maybe it would be nice to just chat about what is codependency, how is it defined, and if we can maybe start there.
I think your comment about that it's not a concept that one does really grow up with, or that you really are familiar with. And I think the first time I stumbled across the term codependency was when I started working in the addiction field. And I think that the term codependency first was really born in the addiction field. So, and they, I can, you know, sort of, they probably developed the concept because it will then be a person that is dependent on a substance, but there's a spouse or a partner that in some way enable the behavior to continue. And that's the first time I got introduced to the term codependency. But what is interesting, Susanna, I think it's a very helpful framework to describe behaviors that we all can recognize. So it's really, because we can look at behaviors from very different angles, very different theoretical frameworks. But I think codependency is a framework in which we can combine a few of the of the descriptions of behavior.
Yeah.
So I think if I must just say how I understand it in a very simple way, we borrow from to feel whole. And that's the basic of the concept, if I can put it very simple. But I think if we just discuss the term, it's a developmental, probably difficulty. So somewhere we got stuck in our psychological development, and that then directs certain behaviors that we do have in our relationships, because we can't be codependent on our own. We have to be in a relationship, and there's the whole thing that starts.
And generally it's not just well, it can be a one-on-one relationship, but there's often also a triangle, isn't there? And
absolutely.
And what you were saying earlier on, because the way I describe it very simply, that's made sense to me, is that we, like you were saying, we borrow from to feel whole. I think you put it so perfectly, because my understanding of it is that you don't feel whole without an outside source validating you or making you feel like you are enough and like you are of value. So I think we basically on the same page there.
That's it. You see, from birth to around about 2-3, very, very important in our bonding, that we find the trust that we need. And it also relates to autonomy. And if we then resolve that developmental task, we then secure enough in ourselves to explore to the outside. But then we got to a sense that we are able to trust the world out there. It's okay. And we can use ourselves to negotiate. If something goes wrong with that stage, then our fear or then anxieties are then very difficult. And then we develop certain patterns in which we take care of that. And often then we find something else on the outside that can regulate that or moderate that for us. So yeah, definitely it moves the internal control to the outside. That's to an external control.
And the type of things that cause something to go wrong, is that lack of a parent being around, an abusive situation. What are the kind of things that contribute to that glitch in the process that would cause something like this?
It's the primary caregiver, or our primary parental figure that we then somehow we don't resolve a trusting relationship with them. So that can be that there would be an absent parental structure. It could be that there's some trauma in the family, like a death of another sibling. It can be a divorce. It can be a death of a parent. And something in the emotional interaction or emotional caretaking of that family then goes wrong. And then there's this absence of the security, the soothing, the protection, that it's not part of our development, and it becomes then a problem to take care of it by ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I was smiling not because, but because that is 90-something% of our planet. The amount of people that are lucky enough to grow up in a home that they've had no disruption whatsoever, during those formative years. I mean, that percentage, it makes complete sense that it's such a tiny percentage of this planet.
Yes. Hence the 96, absolutely.
So some of I think one of the things that interested me was that it's something that always interests me, and that's why I love sharing information, is that I completely believe with the right awareness and the right information, we then can take our power back and make the right shifts in our lives to create the changes that we wish to see in our lives. And there's always a story that I really love. It's this reporter, and he's walking along the road, and he comes across this beggar, and the beggar says, "Please, sir, please give me some change. I've got no home. My father was abusive. My mother was an alcoholic. I had an awful upbringing. Please take pity on me." And the reporter quickly grabs some money out as well. He gives it to the beggar, and he carries on his way. And he gets to his interview, and he does this interview with this incredible CEO who has achieved profound things in his life, and owns companies, and he does all this charity work, and he's just a really impressive human being. And the last question he says to him, he says, "I just have to ask you, what drives you to go for all these amazing goals that you've gone for in your life and achieved all these amazing things?" And the CEO says, "Well, I grew up and my father was abusive and my mother was an alcoholic and I grew up with nothing." And I just love that, because it's so true. At the end of the day, we have the opportunity to decide, am I going to be defined by my past? Am I going to allow what has occurred in my past to define who I'm going to be in my present and my future? Or am I going to take my power back and decide who I'm going to be? And so that was one of the things that happened for me doing this work with you, was I was like, oh, wake up. No, I'm not going to be a codependent person who's always looking outside of myself to feel like I'm enough and like I hold value. And, so for me, that's why I'm wanting to discuss these things and why I love sharing information, because I'm hoping that the information that is shared will spark in someone else that same desire for growth and desire to take their own power back and become who they're really meant to be. And so my question is, do you have a couple of tips or tools that can assist people on their journey to tackling this codependency issue that so many people actually have?
Your comment initially to say, I never knew about a set of behavior patterns that one calls codependency.
Yes.
It's quite interesting, because where one discovers that normally is in some kind of a crisis situation. And the crisis situation normally is because of repetitive behaviors, or then a theme that runs through in most of your relationships. So if one is then sick and tired of being sick and tired, then one starts being aware of, what do I need to do different? And I want to do something different. Mm. So I think, Susanna, the difficulty with the codependency is we have a distorted reality. We don't want to see reality for what it is. So if one do have the courage to say, okay, I'm going to do something about this, then one needs to then be open and mindful of a reality that might be distorted, and one needs to be aware of the input one gets from your environment. And I'm sure in your journey, certain things resonated and certain things then made sense. And then it's very, very important to explore that along the way. So if we can just get out of our perceived reality that it is that I'm a victim and that it's everybody else's fault and that I cannot make any difference, because that's the difficulty in a codependent relationship. We never grow because it's always up to the other person to grow. So yes. One doesn't move forward. And again, we can speak about, because it's about our comfort that we don't want to lose. So we keep people, or we stay in relationships that's not necessarily conducive to any happiness, because we need our comfort. So I just want to say, develop an awareness for the patterns in your behavior. Repetitive patterns that always leads to the same outcome, which is not constructive, or it doesn't bring happiness or joy in your heart, then
Yes.
one needs to start looking at that. And it normally relates, and this, if I may, just relate to your journey.
Yes, absolutely.
It's all about discovering, actually, I don't care for myself. I allow that for the outside to dictate how to take care of myself, or how or the caretaking is on the outside. And then one becomes extremely vulnerable in relationships. It's almost like you are then at their mercy. And look, we can turn this whole thing around. People can also be at your mercy if one needs them.
Sure.
So it's not just about being a victim. You can also be destructive in other relationships because one holds onto the comfort of your psychological comfort and don't want to face reality. Yeah. So,
and you also swap roles, don't you, within that triangle? So
absolutely.
it's not like you are. So we didn't really discuss the triangle, but the triangle is the rescuer, the victim, and the persecutor. And the persecutor is seen as the abuser, and at the victim, and the rescuer is constantly trying to rescue the victim, and they find value in being the person who's rescuing someone all the time. And the victim finds value in poor me at the end of the day, don't they?
Absolutely. Another interesting thing in that drama triangle that plays itself out, it's always a competition for the victim corner. So the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim are all competing for the victim role. So, and that's the game that's been played. It's indirect. It can play out in your family relationships. It can play out in your in your work relationships with your peers. There's always a competition for the victim, because the victim then, there's so much it's a powerful position. One needs caretaking, one needs sympathy, one needs support all the time, and you know, the world is bad and poor me. So that becomes quite a stuck position. Again, if one recognizes this behavior all the time, I'm sick and tired of being the victim, I'm not a victim, then certain things starts changing in that process. Because you see, again, I'm back at very young. If one does not develop a sense that you are capable and has the ability to respond to life on life's terms, and has the confidence and the esteem to do that, again, you're extremely vulnerable to people, to substances, to certain behaviors to make yourself better. And again, it's an honesty to yourself. Do I fall into these traps very quickly?
Yeah, and it's so easy actually when you understand the triangle to bounce between them, because when you're a victim, you'll eventually build up resentment as well. You know,
absolutely,
for always being always being needy and being in that position, even though there is so much reward in being the victim, because people give you attention and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, how can I fix this for you, and all of that. You actually build up resentment for needing that and wanting that and desiring that on a subconscious level, and then that will turn you into the persecutor, because you'll lash out and, you know, get upset, and the rescuer then as well is the one that becomes the victim when you become the persecutor. So it becomes this awful never-ending cycle. And I don't know if I'm wrong, but I don't think that you are ever just one of those aspects in the drama triangle. You will shift and move at different points.
Yeah. If you lose your victim position, then you will shift to another position, again, to get back to the victim victim situation. It explains these abusive relationships, and yeah, it's another. We actually can have the score for 24 hours. I'm sure we would not finish talking by then. There's still more to discuss. But that then keeps us in, and the interesting thing for me is that codependents are rich with resentment. And you see, the difficulty is with that resentment situation is anger's healthy. We can express anger. If we recycle that anger and we combine it with the obsessive, almost fantasy for revenge and punishment, then we get into that. Then we get to resentment, or we got to resentment. And resentment is a beautiful victim role, because I was wronged, and we are wrong. It's okay sometimes to just feel resentful for a day. That's normal. But it's if we park in that position and negotiate our relationships from that position, that's
a problem. Absolutely.
That's correct. Yeah.
But even the rescuer, I mean, after I came to you, I realized what that boyfriend of mine was saying, and I was trying to be the rescuer. He didn't need to rescue. I mean, Gus, you and I have had so many of these conversations, because a rescuer will literally go out of their way to do things for other people that they don't need you to do, but you're trying to find value in yourself. And so I used to make like these lavish lunches for him, and like insane stuff. Everything revolved around like caretaking for him, whereas he was a perfectly capable man and he could do all of that himself. And we were laughing the other day because I remember being in the house, and one of the other people that were in the house, he played the victim beautifully and I played the rescuer beautifully. So there was this wonderful orchestra going around, and you came up to me and you said, Susanna, stop being so arrogant and selfish. And I was like, what? What do you mean, Gus? Miss Perfect, Miss, rescuer of the century. Me? Arrogant and selfish? And he said, give him a chance to learn and to grow. And that has stuck with me so well, because it's helped me create healthy boundaries in my own life. And I obviously still sometimes slip up. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means, but now when I feel that impulse, because it does still come sometimes, to do things for others, I'll actually check myself most of the time and go, do they really need me to do that for them? Or am I trying to gain something out of the situation from an unconscious level, subconscious level?
Yeah.
That was a really good thing for me to learn, because I think that we often, if being codependent, we often will go out of our way to do things that we wish that somebody else would be doing for us. And I think that was a great way for me to become conscious of what I was doing. I was like, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I really just want to be helpful, or am I wishing that this person would do this for me? And then if that's the case, it's coming from the wrong place.
That's it. And we're back at the first bit of the conversation about borrowing then from. So you have to borrow from their pain to feel good about yourself. That then happens, and you have to borrow from them in order for them to do something in the relationship back, so that the reward comes, and some admiration or some affirmation about then the self. So yeah, correct. It's all the time dynamic in that. Yeah. But if one then can understand that behavior, because the outcomes are not necessarily satisfactory, because it's a perfect example, somebody that's ill with some kind of a mental illness, and there's a lot of caretaking and that person then heals and now can suddenly do things for himself. Then the other person, where does their role go to? And that's,
where are they left? Yeah, exactly.
And often they would like to keep the illness going because otherwise they lose their role in the caretaking. Yeah,
because then they're not needed, and then where are you valued if you're not needed? But what I realized is that I need me. And so I started doing the things that I was wishing that somebody else would do for me. I started doing them for myself, instead of projecting that onto everyone around me. And yes, I'm still a huge giver, Gus. You would still tell me I give way too much. I don't think that will ever change in me. But I'm doing it from a much healthier place now. It's not a place, most of the time, at least, it's not a place of I'm doing it to get something back. It's doing it because I'm full now.
Yes.
So I'm not doing it from a place of necessity. I'm just doing it from a place of I'm full, so let me just overflow onto you, which is a much healthier place to be. I might have gotten a bit too independent now. So the next step is maybe working towards becoming interdependent with someone. But I have broken the codependency trap to a large extent, which is what our work was all about. We've already, as you said, we've already been chatting for a while, and you and I can chat for hours. So I think we'll definitely have to do this again, because I think that it's very helpful for people to understand these processes, and just an honest discussion about where people are at and what they're grappling with. And so I think just taking away from the conversation, what people can really look at is watch their behaviors, look at the patterns that they are recycling, and really then be aware of what those patterns are feeding within them, why they are taking certain actions. Have I said that correctly?
Absolutely. I'm not going to add much more to it. It's in relationship. I don't feel good in my relationships. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do for me. Then I need to have a bit of self investigation, self-honesty. Yes. That one just need to see, but now what is happening here? So it's an awareness and an honesty to yourself. And that's sometimes nice, like in your situation, that one does in the beginning really do have somebody that speak through these things with you and recognize them, can give them names, can give them tags, can make them you understand them. That's it. Yeah.
And also I think it's important for people to realize that they're not alone. That we all going through this in varying degrees, and they're not alone, and that it can feel better, because I think that's one of the main things that people grapple with, is that they feel stuck and they feel alone and they feel like there's no way forward of actually feeling better. So I think that's also an important thing to note.
Absolutely. And maybe what we can do at your talks is you wear a t-shirt to say, I survive codependency.
I'm a codependency survivor.
Absolutely. We can even make it more tricky and have one wearing the co and the other person that next to you wear the dependent, and then two people.
And then one that says inter. And then one that says in, and we can just like mix and match around.
Susanna, I just want to make one more comment on when you said, and we spoke, I must just bring myself back to it, and it just out of my head now. I don't know what I was just wanting to come back. It might come into my head again now, what I wanted to say. But, okay.
Yeah, so I think just the for the recap for everyone that's watching is watch your actions, be aware of what they are, where they're coming from, be honest with yourself, and really have a look at, are you happy in your relationship, and why aren't you happy in your relationship? Where is that coming from? Look at your motivations for your actions and see whether they are truly coming from a place of giving, or whether you do actually wish that that outside source was doing that for you. And then start treating yourself like you are constantly wanting to treat everyone else, because then you can start filling yourself up, instead of looking for it from an outside source.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's about the caretaking, or the self-care. Self-love, self-care, same thing. Self-esteem, even, we can put in the same place.
That's Oprah said something so wonderful. I'd never thought of it like this, but she said, I am so full of myself, not from an arrogant point of view, but from a point of view that I know myself so fully, and I care for myself so fully that my cup runneth over, and I thought that was such a lovely way of describing it, because it isn't about self-care, and self-love is not about arrogance, and it's something that we need to change in the perception of a lot of people, because they think that if you say, oh, I love myself, that's an arrogant thing. It's not. Caring for yourself and loving yourself is essential to being a healthy, functional human being, and to being in a place where you can actually truly give back, in a positive way, not from a place of lack. So I think that's it for this discussion. Guys, what do you think?
Here's my comment that I forgot. And
yes, tell me.
Codependency is actually just a lack of a relationship with yourself. Yeah. So your relationship is with someone else, something else, not with yourself. Yeah.
No wonder I found it such profound word.
There we go. You need to have a relationship with yourself that's caring.
Yeah. So it's one of the first steps to self-love. Absolutely. Thank you, Gus. Thank you so much for your time now, and always for everything that you've done for me. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Privilege for me too, Susanna, to share with you.
Thank you.
Okay.